Now, I don't know about you, but when I first started working with Unreal Engine about 2 years ago, I found these physics assets really quite intimidating. There's a lot going on, and there's plenty to be learned about them, and you can make them do lots of wonderful things. So I'm going to start by covering the very basics to begin with. These bodies, let's start with the bodies. You have a few different choices for them. You can use boxes, capsules, and the mannequin doesn't actually have any spheres, but I'm thinking I'm going to add one. And they work in different ways. Spheres don't seem to settle as well as capsules do. Boxes settle very well. Capsules settle. They settle fine. Sometimes you get a bit of wobble and jitter on them, but usually they settle just as well as boxes do. And then there's also convex collision, which I actually try to avoid if I can, because it can turn into quite a performance-heavy process, having lots of vertices being registered by a physics simulation. Now, the spheres are made up of pretty much a single vertex that is measured out from to find a radius of which we should be colliding. Then the capsules are essentially two spheres, and the boxes are, well, they're eight vertices to make a box. So using those, you can often, instead of using convex collision, you could, for instance, on the shoulder up here, you could add a sphere to this upper arm L body, and then a couple of capsules to make a bicep and tricep shape, and get slightly more accurate collision than at a slightly better performance cost than it would probably be to generate convex collision for that shape, unless you were using a very specifically made piece of collision mesh. But that's slightly more advanced for what I want to be doing in this. So that's kind of how the bodies work. They bounce off each other. They do their things. They're limited to each other by constraints, which are placed between the bones of the animation skeleton, which these bodies essentially they represent the bones in the animation body and what they're doing. Now, Mr. Mannequin here, his physics they simulate pretty fine to begin with. A lot of this jittering and juttering, the jumping about, a lot of that, you're not going to see that when you press play in the game. You might do with his feet, because I personally don't like the way they're set up. But a lot of the very, very slight jitters don't happen in the game. It gets settled a different way while the game is playing, and like the whole physics asset, all physics assets get settled slightly differently when the game is playing. And these things don't show up because it happens a lot quicker than it does in here. In fact, I don't think it really ever settles in this physics asset editor. I don't think they ever settle. Perhaps they're not meant to. And okay, so unsimulate him, get him standing back up again. I'm also going to drop the camera speed because I don't like to be whizzing around quite that fast in these. Get a bit confusing. Where shall I start? Mirroring bodies across. There is a mirror function, but it was stated that it's not currently working as intended, and I've experimented with it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When you're mirroring the bodies across, you need to do it by each individual body, and we're going to be using the body setup little window here. We need to pay attention to which body we're actually have selected, because so often I move the wrong body by mistake when I'm doing this bit. So I'm going to mirror this lower leg setup here, where it's got two bodies. I'm going to mirror the whole lot across to this asset by pressing Control Copy, and then Control V for paste. I'm sure everybody knows how to do that. And in here, we're going to reverse the Z location, and we're going to reverse the Y location. Now, if you were coming from Blender, this would be completely different. In fact, if you're using a custom animation skeleton, you may well have very different, need to reverse different X, Y, and Z values here. But for the mannequin and the way all of his bones are set up, reverse Z, the Y, reverse the X. We reverse all three the locations, and then I believe we leave the rotation alone for the mannequin. Like I said, I'm used to doing this from custom skeletons in Blender, so I'm used to doing it a bit differently. Hopefully I don't get lost. So the next body, _1, making sure I'm editing under the first body here. Well, second, but index from 0. So reverse the same values again. So reverse all of the locational values, the center of the body. Reverse it all, and that should give us a nice symmetrical shin calf. It's called calf in here, isn't it? Yes, calf. Nice symmetrical calf bodies there. And I believe the toes are already set up like that. Okay, so that's the bodies. That's how to mirror them across. You're going to need to edit these center values and reverse them by making them either negative or positive, depending what they originally were. And often it's good to do that every time you've edited a body. If you want it to be symmetrical, go and edit them across. Making constraints symmetrical can be a little bit more tricky, but I'm not going to cover that here. Do that a bit later. So bodies mirrored. Let's add a body in. First of all, I want to simulate some more realistic shoulder movement, because while this simulates very well, let's set that to simulate selected. That simulates very well. We get very little jittering there. It's a little bit of jitter on the swing, but it's not too bad. Wouldn't appear in the game so much. We're going to select the bone clavicle L. Now clavicle L is sitting in between spine 3, which is currently represented. Well, it doesn't have a body, does it? No. So it's currently represented by spine 3. It's in between spine 3 and upper arm L. I'm going to select that bone and add a body to it. We're going to add a sphere. Dominant weight, and we'll let it create the joints. Shall we? Yeah, let's let it create the joints. We're going to add the body. So we've added a sphere here, clavicle L sphere. I'm going to, now because we've put a body in between the upper arm, and this is currently Spino 2, but it will become Spino 3 later, their collision has been set again, so they are now, this arm will now collide with this body, as I can show you. Simulate selected, see it's floating up in the air because it's now colliding with this spine 3 body, which it wasn't before. Just unsimulate that and fix it by selecting that body, selecting that body, and up here disable collision. So now if I were to simulate just the arm, it'll just flop like it wasn't there. Now back to this clavicle sphere. I'm going to want to reposition it slightly. So I'm going to translate object. I'm just going to drag it down. I want to try and get it sort of on the ball of, right clicking there. Get it on the joint of the shoulder there where it's going to roll around. So it sort of can move about. So it's sort of centered on the where the weight of the shoulder should be falling. Should be where the weight of the rotation should be coming from. Because I'm now going to venture into the constraints for it. So the upper arm L, so the clavicle constraint here, is now identical to the one that was attaching it to the spine bone here. Is now that's the same constraint, it's just moved on to the clavicle instead of the spine bone. So I don't need to worry too much about that. The clavicle to the spine, however, in this bone, we're going to click disable collision. I don't want that to be colliding at all. And in its constraint, its linear limits, I'm going to set all of them to limited. And I'm going to lock all of its angular constraints. So now this, I prefer to use a linear limit here on quite a tight linear limit. I think I put it at 2.5 normally, maybe even less than that. And I do that because you get this slightly better swinging motion when the character gets hit. Because if it's rotational, you end up with this whole almost hinge-like motion as the character falls and flops around from the shoulder. And really, if it's relaxed, it's more of an up and down rolling sensation that you can do. So I set a linear limit instead of a rotational one like many people might do on it. Now spheres don't settle quite as well as capsules do, from my experience anyway. So let's just see how it simulates. Yeah, it wobbles. It wobbles, quite a lot of wobble there, and it jitters up and down as such. But that can all be covered. That jitter on the arm, that's not likely to appear much in the game. However, the slight swinging that it's causing might do. So if I come to my clavicle spheres, constraint between, well, let's talk about dampening then. That's the next thing to cover. Dampening. We have soft constraints, which are kind of speak for themselves. They're soft. Yeah, they seem to go over the limits that you set, unless you set the stiffness very high. Now, I prefer to avoid messing with the values that get put in here on the other bodies if I can, because to change them from what they are, they're very sensitive values. They're very sensitive, these soft constraints. So to make this a really stiff soft constraint, you'd want to times that by 1,000. That'd be one like 50,000, much more than 50,000. You're not going to be noticing much difference. Dampening, I think this isn't the correct ratio. I think a better ratio would be more something to half, something to 50%. Is actually how much it damps of the, I'm assuming, the velocity of the rotation that it's trying to be pushed into. I'm not 100% sure on the relation between the stiffness and the dampening here, which is why I try and avoid using it if I can, because I'm just not too sure on it. I've read a few different things about how it works. But if you're going to play with it, you're playing with a very large spectrum of numbers, so I prefer to avoid it altogether if I can, and instead set it up in the body. So where was I? With the clavicle sphere, I'm going to want to, don't know why that was unexpanded. So I set it to linear dampening to about 2, angular dampening to, let's set that to 10. We don't really want we want very little angular impact, because these values seem to affect when the physics asset actually gets hit more, when it's actually being impacted. These two values here seem to dampen things more than the soft constraints do. So I'll try and use these, and then when these really aren't working, I use the soft constraints. I start tweaking the soft constraints into place, because you do want to be using soft constraints for a lot of things. Well, let's see how that simulates then with a bit of dampening on it. That's much less wobble. The wobble seems to be more on the upper arm, so I could come to that body here and let's give that some linear dampening. So because it's going to be being pulled in a linear fashion by its parent bone, which is now the clavicle. Well, parent body, which is now the clavicle. It was already the parent bone. Let's try putting this at about maybe 5. And that angular dampening is we're gonna want to put some on this leg, but not too much. So I've set them both to 5, and I might actually set this to 7.5. Now, with the linear dampening, if you set this much above 25, you might start defying gravity, and that's not really what you want. You only want things to defy gravity if other parts of the physics asset want to be falling quicker. So you only really want to be messing with the linear dampening, which is why I'm doing this to the arm and the shoulder, because they do want to, if we suddenly dropped, our shoulders are going to come up, our arms are going to come out, our fingers would go up as well. So all of these things want to have slowly increasing linear dampening going down the limbs. That's the way I've found that works best. We could mess with the mass in kilograms, but that just makes things even more complicated, which I didn't want to go to in this video either. Where was I? Clavicle sphere. So we've got some linear down. Let's see how that simulates now. There we go. That's a lot less. It's still jumping, but as you can see, it settles it will settle. That'll settle in the game. So I'm happy to leave that like that for now. I might actually just decrease the size of this body, because that's the next thing I was going to go into anyways after I mirrored the clavicle across, and I may as well mirror this at the same time. So I think I'm going to actually going to increase its angular dampening here to 7.5 and its linear dampening to 12.5. See how that simulates then. Then I'll, yeah, that's a bit. Let's leave that like that. That'll do for now. That'll do for now. I'll probably have to come back and tweak it all in as I do the rest of it. I'm also going to increase the bodies. Okay, so bodies and the moving and the size of them. The size of them is going to affect the stability of the physics asset. That's what I found, anyways. So really, some of this jitter that's happening from simulating the clavicle sphere, a lot of that also can be counteracted by. Let's make the sphere for the shoulder bigger. Doesn't need to be much bigger, but let's make it a little bit bigger. Go in here and take its radius, increase its radius so it's a bit closer to the size of the arm body. It's still nowhere near the size of this spine body, but the eye is a bit closer to the size of the arm body. And then if we simulate that, we should have even less jitter, because the weight of this body has now automatically been increased because it's slightly bigger. So yeah, it looks like it's not moving half as much on the shoulder up here than it was. Which isn't a bad thing, really. That's what that's supposed to cover. The other constraint, the constraint for the shoulder, should really be doing that. Now with this body, let's change up the upper arm body, because I don't really like how it is. There's a gap there as well, which you could potentially shoot a line trace through that by mistake if you weren't careful, if you were trying to pick up physics asset things. So let's I'm going to drop its radius, so it's a bit too wide really for what it's needed for. We can use the shoulder here. If we take the clavicle sphere and move it out a bit, grab you, pull you out a bit, it can take up that sort of top curve of the arm there. I'm going to put it down a bit too, get it in line there. The way to get with the sort of weight of everything again. And we're going to go back to the arm again. Made it a bit thinner. Let's make it a bit longer. And then I'm going to swap my coordinate space to local, so I can drag it down its axis here, this z-axis, and that's not quite long enough really. Let's make that a bit longer. Move around the back. Okay, a bit longer. Then I'll move it out, back along that z-axis again, and then still a bit wide. Do you think it's a bit wide? I think it might be a bit wide still. I don't mind having a little bit of overlap. We want to try and keep all of the outsides of these bodies quite close to the mesh as we can. Close as we can. It doesn't matter having a bit either side. Having a bit of mesh poking out up here, or having a little bit down there. All that means is if something's going to overlap with that tiny piece of mesh before it collides with the physics asset. So things won't get made to move until it hits that physics asset. You're not really going to notice that. Sometimes, particularly in maybe a fighting game, it could be useful to have all of these physics bodies under the skin, so it looks like you're actually impacting with the person without having anything like here, where if you hit that, it's going to start moving before you get anywhere near the skeletal mesh that it's supposed to represent. But I'll come back to that later and fix all that up. So I made this body a bit smaller, moved it down around. We need to rotate it a bit, maybe. No, it needs to come back a bit though. So let's put it on that x-axis there. Put it down a bit on the y-axis. It doesn't look like we've made much difference, does it? Looks like we want to actually add some more dampening on here. Maybe make this 3. Let's make that 4 and set the angular dampening to something like 15. Maybe we really don't want this to rotate at all, or really get anything much from that. Shouldn't No. Perhaps there's too much. Perhaps there's too much. I know what might help it actually. Maybe we should lock the in and out motion, which would be X motion. So if we set that to locked, we shouldn't be able to wobble from side to side anymore. Yeah, that's quite right. So that will stop it from wobbling from side to side. We do have a little bit. I think maybe I've set this a little too high. Maybe our limit wants to be more like 1.5. A really low, not really low limit, possibly even less than that. This is going to get pulled quite a lot by its children, by the children bodies. I think that helped a bit. That helped a bit. We don't shake around as much. We're not going as far. Should we try tweaking the restitution maybe, or the contact distance? How close to the limit we have to get before turning it on? Should we see what happens if we put this to 5 to 1 as well? A lot of jumping around there. Okay, so definitely let's set this to 0.125. Set the contact distance to 2, and we'll see how that goes. I'm not in. So these guys, they talk for themselves on their tooltips. I shouldn't really need to explain what they do. It's the good old-fashioned means of collision. It's quite jittery and juddery though. Probably best used for other things. So I'll just leave those at default. So probably best place to put them. Fact. Leave that at 0, and I'm going to put this to 7.5. And simulate. Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's where I want it to be. That's working how I like it. How I'd like it to. What's next then? So we've altered the size of these bodies to make them to change the way they fall. We've also edited the constraints, and we've edited the dampening. Let's mirror those changes across from the upper arm. So I'll copy the upper arm and I'll paste it onto the other upper arm's body. And let's see, I believe it should be the same values that I edited last time. I'm going to swap this back to swap the gizmo back to local in case it doesn't like it, and I want to reverse all of its locations. So if it was positive, make it negative. If it was negative, make it positive. And that is because the mannequin's bone roll is opposing for all of its symmetrical pieces, as far as I'm aware anyways. Like I say, I work from Blender, so I get a bit of a different view on a lot of things from people working in Maya. Let's see, spheres. Where's my sphere gone? Upper arm. Oh, we're on Clever Glass. So Clever Glass, before we add the sphere, we're going to need to just add a body to it, and then I can select clavicle L sphere, copy its properties with Control C, paste its properties to the right sphere that I just generated with Control V. Oh, it doesn't want to do it. Didn't pick it up. Let's try that again. There's my clavicle L. I selected the sphere instead of the actual body reference. Copy properties. And on my right clavicle sphere. Going to do it again. Paste the properties. Now it's floating over here, so we'll reverse its location again. And we'll check to see if those two bodies are now looking quite symmetrical to me. Yes. Yeah, that's quite. Yeah, that's. I think that's symmetry. So that's mirrored those two bodies across. They now look the same. Constraint has not been done. We can copy and paste. I think the constraint did get done. Maybe it doesn't. Do I have to do that separately? Paste. Oh yeah, no. Maybe we copy. Let's copy the constraint. Copy that constraint, and we can paste it onto clavicle R to spine 2 constraint. Then we'll have to flip it around because I'm not actually. Okay, let's talk about constraints. So these constraints, we can change and move them around. We can rotate them so that they constrain from different angles, as the shoulders are here done by default. So you can, I think there is multiple axes. If I was to, no, is it not? Is it snapped in place? Because we can snap them. Yeah, okay, it's already snapped. So if we were coming from Blender, then the bones are going to be on a different roll. They have a different. They use the y-axis instead of the x-axis as their main roll, so we'll be using completely different x and y values for like everything, and a lot of the time the z as well, because that's still good depending on which way you have your roll in Blender. So we can swap the direction of which these axes are aligned to the bone by pressing Q. And if you're in Blender, coming from Blender, you're likely just going to want to press Q once, and that will set it up, because we want the correct. We want the twist motion, the twist, to actually be the twist for the constraint. So I'm going to snap that back after pressing Q. Well, I pressed it 3 times and snapped it back anyways. And yeah, so we want the axes pointing in the right direction, so the bones that they're supposed to be representing the constraints of the bodies for. So let's go over that quickly. Now, if I was to just copy and paste this across, we'd end up with this being the wrong way around, I think. Or at least wrong way around from where it wants to be generated to. So I'm going to snap it, make sure it's snapped, and I'm just going to copy across the same constraint, which would be that we have locked angular limits, limited x, y, and z, linear limits to 1.5, I think I set it to. I'll check quickly. 1.5 in that constraint, 1.5 and disable collision. 1.5 and disable collision. Now, I shouldn't need to touch the upper arm constraints from the original ones. They should all be working the same. I simulate them both with the simulator selected. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I need to put the body in between them, so I need to disable their collision, the collision between spine and arm, otherwise it's going to bounce everywhere. Now these two should simulate very similarly. Yes, they do. It seems to be anyways. I've got different dampening on the arm body, but that should have been copied across, shouldn't it? Dampening? Yeah, the dampening gets copied. I tweak the rest, I believe I changed. No, I didn't change did I change the contact distance on the left one? I remember playing with it. Yes, 7.5, so let's get that symmetrical as well. Iterated across. 7.5 contact distance for that. Okay. What's next? That's those two arms. They should be doing the right thing. Keep checking, keep simulating, just keep simulating. That's what you've got to do with, oops, not all of those, just what you've got to do with these. Clavicle, sphere R. Should be doing pretty similar things there. Yes, they are. Let's check that again. Yeah, there's a bit of wobble on both of them, but maybe a bit of wobble anyways. We could further dampen that, but probably, I think it's not settling very well because it's a sphere. Maybe I'll change that into a capsule later on, or you could do some clever stuff with some box collision, because box collision settles very well. So you could possibly have a box that's designed to get blocked on a soft constraint by a capsule up here, or by another box that you could use attached to the spine 3 bone as a shoulder blade or something. You could use these kind of, you can use bodies in all kinds of different ways to make them bounce off each other when you want them to. Let's further dampen the head and neck, because, oh no, well, before I do that, really, I need to get the spine simulating. Now, the spine bones can be quite tricky. The more bones you have in a chain of them, so a bit like a spline, really, the more bones you have in a chain, the more bodies you have, the more unstable it becomes. So when I come to doing the fingers, that's a very good example of it, because it's 3 small bodies with very little weight that need to have a lot of dampening put on them, and they have to have very specific constraints to make them move correctly too. Otherwise, you end up with them rotating all over the place on ball and socket joints. On the spine, it's quite tricky as well, because there's a lot of weight and it gets pulled from both sides. But providing this is symmetrical, this should fall forwards or backwards when it's simulated, and it falls to the sides. There must be some weight. Mustn't be correct. That could be all sorts of things doing that. In fact, it could even be because the body here is not central. Bodies aren't central on their rotation's a bit off, you see. The rotation and the central location, which would be the z-axis, is off by a tiny amount, and you don't really want that. You don't want that. So it's that z location, really. The y usually do the y rotation too, because it's already pretty much at 0, it's just slightly off. And it falls quickly. It twists around now a bit too. It could be down to the rotation. Now let's rebuild this body, shall we? I might have it like that. Let's see. First, let's see. Oh, it's on a free constraint between this and its previous body, which isn't a good thing. So, Spino 3 to 2. This is going to be limited on everything. The soft constraint that I'd like to leave alone if I can. Swing limit. Let's check this is pointing in the right direction. I believe it is. It wouldn't be for my mannequin, so it's worth checking. I'm going to snap it as well. So let's get this limited. Our swing limit, which one's that? Let me see. So our swing, that's our forwards and backwards. Right, so let's set that. That's not going to, we're on a soft constraint, so we don't want to set it too high. We're probably going to leave that at 45. Our side to side motion, we're going to want to make very small. Probably make that like, let's make that 7.5 and see what we end up with. Now, twist, we're going to set that smaller than that, because while I said there's more twist there than anywhere else, there's still not really all that much twisting motion in the human spine. And I'm going for a bit of realism here. So, whoops. Just to hold down to 25. Let's try 25. Instead of 45 on the twist. And then let's see what horrible things might happen when I simulate it with those bodies like that. Oh, it's not as bad as I thought. It's not heavy enough. It's too much going back. It's like the head's too heavy. Like the head's flipping it back. Yeah. So now I'm going to need to tweak the neck and the head to fit with that a bit better. But first, I'm going to set some dampening on this so we don't swing back quite so fast. Linear dampening. This is technically on a limb. When I was playing with this physics asset, it took me a long time to get 3 spine bones working properly in a row for my anatomic skeleton. So to get this going, we're going to need to use some the ratio that needs to be between the linear dampening and the angular dampening on all of these bodies between each other needs to be quite specific, and I might even end up editing the constraint stiffness too. So to start with, if memory serves, I believe I have linear dampening on this particular one. It needs to be increased because it counts as the end of a limb. Set that to about 5, I think. I set my linear dampening here to 5, and then the angular dampening isn't too high. It's higher than the bone below. No, it's not. The angular dampening on the spine starts dropping as we go past the as we go past the last 6 thoracic vertebrae. So let's put this to, let's have this at 7.5, and let's see how that simulates. It's still moving way too fast. The angular, there's too much, so there's too much weight on this head, I think. So I think really as well the radius could be much bigger on this. I think maybe my body for spine 3 here isn't quite big enough. So let's go into his body setup again. I'm going to increase his radius there a bit more, and I'm going to drag it down. It could be too high as well. I think it might have been, I might have had it a little too high. We'll put it back in again. That could also be pulling it backwards because it's not central. But then its constraint with the bone below it isn't in the correct place, and I'm going to come back to that shortly and switch that up too. I'm just trying to get this to simulate a bit more how I want it to. So I'm getting a lot of jumping around on those clavicle bones. It could be, looks like they're colliding with the spine, this spine bone here. Ah, they are. So we need to select both of these clavicle spheres and disable the collision with that body there, because their linear constraint is never going to allow them, shouldn't really be allowing them to go too near it anyways. So we'll disable the collision between those two, and then see how that goes now. That should simulate a bit nicer. Oh, take okay, maybe not. What if we've got jumping around here then? What's that colliding with? Perhaps it could be the soft constraint of spine. Let's take my sphere here and let's pull it in. Actually, let's undo that. I don't want to move it in. It's in a good place at the moment. Could be too big. It could be not big enough. It could be affecting that. It could want a very specific weight. It could be that it has not enough linear dampening, too much angular dampening. So change this. No, let's not change that. Let's simulate just that. Oh, okay, we're having jumping around from it anyways. We're colliding with something. Are we colliding with? No, we're not. We've got the arm colliding with the body again because I deleted it and put a new one in. So we need to set these arms to be disabled from each other. That's not colliding. Yes. Okay. So now maybe we'll get a. There we go. That was very direct, very prompt simulation. But that was a lot less jittering around, wasn't it? There we go. 90% of the time, if something is bouncing around like that, because it's bouncing into something it shouldn't, or because something on the end of a chain of bones is bouncing into something it shouldn't. Because sometimes I've had problems where, say, I'm simulating the spine bone up here, and I'm trying to figure out why the hell I'm jumping around, and I can't figure it out. It's actually because the hand here is rubbing on the thigh, which we want it to do. And it's the jitters like that aren't going to become apparent in the game, because if it was colliding and settling in the game, if that was settling in the game, either the character's going to be driven by an animation, or the character's going to be not want to be moving. If it's driven by an animation, it's going to be colliding and swinging around everywhere it wants to. If it's going to be simulating on the floor, we're not going to have these judders. So it's not too much for a settling issue, really. But I'm quite pleased with how that's flopping as it is. To be honest, I usually have a lot more trouble getting the chest to work properly, but I haven't really gotten into that yet because I only just set this body up and it's not quite. It needs to be a little bit lower, really. Maybe it's a case of using this. I think with the mannequin, it's going to be a case of using this bone here as the chest, this body here as the chest, sort of the chest cavity. So let's pull this up, and that might be all we need to do to it. Yeah, that was quite neat. I'll pull it up and put it back a bit. I'm going to rotate it forward slightly so we can catch the top of this curve here a bit better. We're going to have to select the spine 2 body. We're going to have to disable collision here. That shouldn't matter too much. It doesn't need to be colliding with it because its constraint should stop it from going that far anyways. If it was swinging, so it would stop the head from hitting it. So that's the neck. See how we're simulating from this central bone here. This is where we should get lots of jumping around. As you can see, we're bouncing a bit, swinging around. That's not too bad at all. We're getting there. Simulate it from here. So there we go. There we have some issues. There we have some issues to cover. This bone here, I probably shouldn't have put it on its side. I think maybe we'll flip this bone back from its 90-degree angle, or flip it to a 90-degree axis on the Y. See that now. There we go. It's not really that much better. Right, we need angular dampening, which should hopefully solve a lot of this. So, first one, we're probably going to have quite a, let's put that 5. The linear dampening reasonably. Don't want linear dampening too high on these, so we'll set that to 2. And we'll set this spine 2 body, let's set that to more like, let's set its angular dampening to something more like 10. We want quite a lot of dampening on this particular bone, and its linear dampening, let's set that to say, let's set that to 3.5 for this one. Might be too much. I might end up putting that down because that'll stop things from falling because it's on the top here, so the body won't fall down as fast as it should. But we want quite a lot of linear dampening up here. So let's see. All damped angularly except from the pelvis. Should probably do as well. Let's do pelvis. Let's tweak him into place too, because it's not quite right. It's going to want to be a bit further up than that to start with. It's got on quite a good level really now. Yeah, let's just leave that at that. It's quite simple. Maybe put down a little from where I had it there. And linear dampening is going to want to be next to nothing. We'll put that to 1, and maybe even less. Let's put that to 0.75. Angular dampening, however, we could put a reasonable amount on here. Let's put 7.5 on this one, because it doesn't. There's a lot of body parts that are going to get pulled first, so we're going to want to dampen that angle a bit. Let's try simulating from here and see what we get. There we go. That's starting to look a bit better. There's too much this constraint here in the middle of the spine. That needs some work. So let's go to spine 2 to spine 1 constraint here. I'm going to pull it up. A bit so it rotates from on a slightly different position. And I'm going to click disable collision on this constraint. And let's limited locked. Swing. We have a lot of the wrong swing here. Let's set this to 15, swing 1, and I might leave swing 2 at about 15 as well. Let's put that down to 10. Okay, and our twist limit, let's make that a lot less. Let's make that 12.5 perhaps, probably a better one to go for. See how that one is going. Yeah, that's a bit better. I'm quite happy with that constraint still. I think it definitely wants to be moved up. Let's move this constraint right up here, more towards the top of this body. And I'm going to put it forward a little bit. No, I don't want to put it forward. Let's put it back a little bit actually. Pull it back a little bit. And I'm going to reduce that swing limit altogether. Let's put that down to 25. And its twist, let's also drop that quite a lot too. Let's put that down to 10. So this is all soft. These are all soft constraints, so they're going to be twisting over the values that we set, or they're going to seem to be. See how you'd go now. Oh, we've got lots of jumping, but it's settled. Okay, does it do it again? Oh no, it doesn't. Maybe that was. Sometimes when you're in these physics assets, they can almost lag, and the physics gets really jerky because it's quite a performance-intensive task to have this loaded. My old desktop fried on these physics assets. They pretty much killed it. The graphics card couldn't handle them. They handled everything else though. That's not too bad. I feel like well, I need to do the dampening on the neck and the head, don't I? I've said it a couple of times now. So let's get our head body, and then we can get to our neck shape from there. Anyways, now I've changed the shape of this already. I think I'm going to pull it down further into where it's meant to be. Put it down a bit further, and let's give it some. This is going to want this now. Now I treat the head and the neck as a separate limb from the spine, which I shouldn't really, but I do, and it's kind of the only way I could get this to work on a realistic human. So the linear dampening for this, I think, is not too high. It's lower than the previous. I think it's like 2.5 linear dampening on the neck, and the angular dampening is like 15. It's quite high. We want to have quite a stiff neck going on because the neck's going to get pulled a lot by the body of the head, which is on top, and the body of the head is bigger than it, which is a bit of a pain. So I'm gonna actually add an extra body. I'm gonna add another capsule to the head here. I'll pull it up. This is going to be capsule 1, so that can be the back of the head. And the linear dampening for the head, let's do that now quickly. That can be, I think I have slightly more than the net. Yeah, so 3 for the net linear dampening, and the angular dampening we want to have slightly less than the net, because we can get more twist off of it, because it gets quite difficult animating the neck to the head on an anatomical, very realistic character, because the movement of the head affects the movement of the spine. Let's see how that goes. 0 off the head and the head, both the head bodies. On the Z location, make sure that's all zeroed. All the central all the central bodies here should have 0 on this location. In theory, they want to be quite exact to the bone. So all of these are, except for the pelvis, 0, 0. Now, I'm not too sure. I'm not quite happy with this body here. I feel it should be different. It should be a bit different. Maybe it should be wider, much longer. Well, not too much longer. Let's make it longer and pull it up. It doesn't want to be in the pelvis too much, but it doesn't matter if it's clipping up here. And we can take this body and disable its collision with the spine 3 bone, spine 3 body. Disable that collision because it looks like they might touch. I'm also going to take the neck and disable that from these 2 spheres, just in case they swing too far. Don't really want them to be jumping off the neck and getting stuck on it. That body's bigger, so it should support the weight of the torso a bit better. I'm going to rotate it as well. Rotate it back like that. And I think maybe going to put it down and make it longer. I'm going to make it longer. Do I? Should I? Yeah, let's make it longer. Make it a bit longer. It's going to increase its weight slightly as well, which isn't a bad thing. It's also going to change where that curve is down there. Then I can pull this back maybe a little bit, leave it like that. Just leave it so it pokes out in front of the stomach a little bit. Maybe rotate it back 1 click, and then pull it back in. Oops. And pull it back in again. I think that should simulate quite okay. Ish. Let's see what it looks like. There we go, that's much better than it was before. We've still got too much flop going back. You can see the dampening that happened on the head there. It didn't snap straight back. Still jumping and jittering, but a lot of that jumping and jittering won't be there. I think some of it might hang around though, specifically from the top here on that last spine bone. So I'm going to take the constraint. I suppose a lot of the twisting motion of your spine, really, a lot of that is actually contained in this middle part here. So if I come to this one's constraint set up here. This constraint it's got a reasonable twist limit for the spine. If I remember correctly, none of the degrees of any of the vertebrae are above more than like 7 or 8 degrees. I think maybe there's 1 or 2 that's like 10 or 12. I can't remember. It's quite a few bones in your spine. Really, the rotation of them is dictated by the intervertebral discs, not the vertebrae. So if we take our spine 2 to spine 3 constraint here, I might even lock its twist limit. That often solves a lot of problems, where I could lock its swing so it doesn't swing forwards and backwards. In fact, actually, let's lock its side to side swing, so we can't flop too much. No, I want to keep that one. Let's lock the twist motion on the spine, this spine bone here, the spine 3 body. Let's lock its twist motion with that constraint. And then on the constraint for spine 2 to spine 1, let's lock it side to side maybe? No, I can't really do that. Let's maybe lower it to be even smaller. No. Let's see how that simulates from this bone. Still have a lot of jumping around there, but it settles. So what happens if so it's like in this one. Just don't want to be crashing into it. Still, we're leaning too far back. Which bone's rolling too far back? This one here. That guy's going too far back. So, oh yeah, like the other constraint, I need to grab this constraint here. I want to rotate it forward, so we can't bend back as far as we can bend forward with it. Okay, let's see how that simulates. If I zoomed out a bit first. How does that go? Oh, there we go. Look, he's almost hanging on top. Doesn't want to go back at all. That's too much rotation. Or plenty of rotation and not enough limit, not enough swing. So let's increase that so we can go back a bit, not too much. You still see where we are from the previous axis. So let's set that to 40. And then see how we look when it simulates. There we go. We lean back a bit. That looks much more natural. That looks a lot more natural. The jutters aren't as abrupt as well. They're kind of, when I'm moving the mouse over it, as you can see, if I move the mouse over it, it goes crazy. Stop touching it. Start settling. Oh, we're going crazy again. I think those spheres or the arms are bouncing off something. That is what's causing that. That's what I was saying before. Sometimes the hands rubbing down here can trigger a whole thing that goes all the way up through the body if it's not dampened properly. This looks more like it's the neck hitting something it shouldn't actually, though, coming from the back here. So let's see what can we collide with the neck. Not a lot. How about the head? Aha, our head is colliding with the body for spine 3. We don't want that. Let's disable that collision. See how it goes then. We should be near the end of this video now, I hope. Oh yes, there we go. A nice natural flop. Until I move my mouse or click on it. Nice and natural flopping. See what? So like I say, a lot of this jittering isn't going to be very obvious in the game engine when we're playing the game. I could probably show that. How's that head body? I'm not quite happy with that. Let's move that around a little bit. Right, let's take this pelvis constraint here. I don't like where that is at all. I'm going to move that right down. Take this. I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is actually going to come down a bit. Rotation for this body down here, because it would probably affect the top 2 lumbar spines slightly. So pull that down. And then this is going to be one of this spine 3 to spine 2. I should probably be much lower, really, shouldn't I? I put it too high. It should be low. It should be underneath should be in the middle of the thoracic spine. Probably be around about there-ish, at the middle of the chest. Then the neck isn't too bad where it is. I think I might put it down a little further, like so. And I've got dampening on them all, haven't I? That's my pelvis is 75. We don't want really any linear dampening. So let's increase the angular dampening on the spine 1. Let's make this one 7.5. Linear dampening, I might make that just 1.5. We don't have too much of that. We'll take our spine 2, and I think let's get a bit creative here. So I think I could probably flip it on its side here. No, I won't. I'll leave it like that. I'll leave it like this for now. Okay, and probably does want to be considered the bones. So angular dampening on this. Let's try setting this one to 15. And this one to 10. Let's drop the linear dampening on this to 2.5 and increase the linear dampening on this to 5. I think 5, no, it's probably going to be too much. Put that to 3.5. We don't want anything above 3, too much above 3 or so for these particular parts, because we're going to want them to fall, and they won't fall otherwise. Now, the angular dampening on the head here, that's pretty high. That's quite high. That's about as high as it goes. You don't want to put it much higher than 50 or things won't move. So let's drop that right down. Let's put that to 25. And let's take, if that's like that, it's 15. Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, no, that works out about right. So let's simulate our head. That's kind of doing what a head should do, I guess. Just kind of floppy. Simulate it from the neck. That's what we get there. Oh, the neck's moving far too far forwards. Far too far forwards there. So, should we check its soft constraint? Could have had something done to it. Here. Oh, it's got limits locked. It's locked on has no twist on it. So let's give it back. Let's give it back its twist and that. And let's reduce them quite a lot. Let's make that 15 and the twist can be like 5, not even that. What have we got here? Contact distance, stiffness level, alright. I think it's this twist limit might want to not be a soft constraint. Let's see how that goes. Still too far forwards though. So let's unrotate what I did to it already. Let's just snap it back to where it was originally. And yeah, we still get the face going into the chest a bit there. We're still getting a lot of bounce as well. So let's try moving it up and see what happens. Still plenty of bouncing. I think it might be because I've reduced the radius too much. I think it might want to be wider, which would make it heavier. And there's also, I haven't set simulate generate hit events on a lot of the bones that are going to need it. So I'll do that. I'll set up this neck and I'll finish off this video by selecting everything with the new little menu down here and setting everything at once to simulate generate hit events. And no, the angular dampening wants to be quite high on this. The linear dampening must be up. Too bad, yeah. So neck 1 to spine 3 constraint. I do want it down a bit. Maybe we should try. No, let's not put it forwards. Neck 1 to spine 3. Okay. Twist limit. What's pulling it? Really, it's this large swing 25 limit that's causing issues. So put that to 15. Set this to 10. So we've got 15, 10, 5 going on there. Let's see how we simulate. Oh, that's a bit better. We're still jumping a bit. We're still jumping around. That looks like it's the head that's doing the jumping though. Try increasing its radius. So it's more of a chunky neck there to hold everything together. Oh yeah, that helped. That helped. That definitely helped. Still got the head bouncing a bit, but not as much as it was. So now I've got the damping set. Let's see what it looks like from the shoulders then. I want to stop that little judder on the head, that little jitter. There must be a way. There has to be a way. Perseverance is key for these foreboding physics assets. Try it. This is what happens if I just do that and do that. Sometimes you never know. No, not too much difference. I was going to set that anyways. I'll do it for now. So I'm jumping and juddering on this bit. I wonder why. Let me check could be on the head constraint here. Oh, I didn't undo this. Let's put the soft constraint back on and see what it's like with the capsule size difference. Okay. So if we come to the head capsule here, On the head in general, maybe no. I'm going to put this angular dampening down to 15 and its linear dampening to 1.5 because I want the neck. The neck wants to be dampened more than the head linearly. Let's drop this to 2. Drop this to 12.5. Like little small values can make quite a big difference to the dampening. The capsule. Let's try hiking it right up. Let's put this somewhere here. Put it somewhere up here, and I'm gonna pull the head straight back in and drop it down. Maybe might pull this body further down. No, let's not do that. Let's do that. Oh, just want to let me undo that. Never mind. Put it back up or down. Up or down, up or down, split there, and let's see how it simulates now. Well, we're getting there, Still jumping, but we're getting there. So if you can lock an axis, you're going to be able to increase the stability, but I can't really lock any of these particular ones. But I could set this spine bone to have parent dominating. A lot of this. I'm just trying to fine tune it so you can really see how much effort needs to go into these physics assets sometimes to get them going how you want. Sometimes you go in here and you could be in here for 45 minutes. Sometimes you come into a physics asset, you could be in here for a few days. Like quite happily, like a good 16 hours of work to get a full human going on and moving correctly. And that's just the trial and error. That's not making it all perfect. I don't really want to mess with the soft constraint values at the moment. Parent dominates didn't help. So have a look at how it's simulating there. Where's the jump? The head's jumping on the neck there. The head's jumping on the neck. So what's the mass? The head is 4 compared to 2. That could well be it. Should we take the mass in kilograms of the neck? Knowing that the head's around 5, let's set this to 7.5. So that we have a heavier body underneath it. And then this should be around the same weight as that anyway. Now if I simulate it, there we go, you see that straight away, there's a lot less jumping around because the body below it, its parent body is heavier than it. Whereas if the body above is heavier than the parent bone, you kind of need to have that parent dominates function going on. But that parent dominates function means that if that bone gets hit, that parent body isn't going to move when it's simulating, which isn't very desirable for something like the head, which if you punch it, you want it to flip, about the place. You want it to, the head gets hit, the neck should move, so we don't want parent dominates there. We might increase its linear dampening, but we don't want the head to lag behind the rest of the body too much. Angular dampening. Maybe up that here as well. Let's set that to 20. Set that right up to 20 and see how that helps. See if that helps at all. Still jumping about. It's very fine jitters though, isn't it? We're getting there. Let's try an even lower value. Fine jitter. I think more on this. This seemed to help, didn't it? More than anything else. So the angular dampening could make that even higher, but I don't want to put it off too much. Set it too far off what it should be. It could be that the bodies aren't doing what they're supposed to. Let's try. If I select all of the bodies it's edited so far today, I think they all want it, don't they? Yeah, they all go. All of these bodies want to have. Yes, including the spears. All of the bodies that I've edited today, select them all at once, and if I come into, obviously the mass here is saying we've got different values going on because that's because I changed the mass up there. In fact, I'm gonna undo that because I don't think that's, well, it definitely helped. So No, I'll leave the mass. I changed the mass and I'll leave the mass. And I'm gonna end up going through and changing the mass for most of these spine bones in a future video as well. It's just getting the basic setup done and showing what it takes to get physics assets running. So we want them all to be considered for bounds, and we want them all to generate hit events there. So now if I come off this and I select just the arm, it's now simulate generation hit events. They're all simulating the generated hit events, which is what we want them to do. Right. Okay, so in the next video, I'll come back to our mannequin here and I will continue tweaking bodies like there's no tomorrow, because it can take so long to get these things working properly. And I'm going to add in some fingers, and I'll cover the twist bones, which will twitch with animations if you currently simulate the mannequin, which I can show in a minute. So let's see. I'll tell you what. First of all, let's take the pelvis here and we'll just simulate. And that's the whole thing simulating. So we're falling a bit slowly there. That's because of all the linear dampening going up the spine. All that linear dampening is slowing everything down a bit, but that's not too unrealistic, because we wouldn't just drop straight to the ground. Our legs would have to buckle. Like, that would have to happen. There'd be a slight jerk motion there as well, which we might be able to pull up. So our legs would buckle. That's quite accurate. That's quite accurate. Let's test this. Save. Come in here and let's click this guy and wiggle him and save current. So, oh, now it lets me. Right. Okay, after all that hassle. So I've got my nice little simulation component that I made in another video, which I'm going to come back to and add a lot more to it. It's just a very convenient way of checking the simulation. So you can see the dampening on the arm there. If you had followed the other tutorial, you'd know that the arm would be flopping and popping all over the place whenever you hit it. But now it's like there's a bit of muscle holding it back when it gets hit, which is quite good. So let's see how a whole body simulates. Float through the air too much. There's too much dampening on that pelvis, I reckon. It's probably the cause of that, but let's sort of tweak that quickly. But I'll show you how different bits and bobs don't quite flop the same. Let's make this really low, 0.25. We want the tiniest bit on the pelvis, tiniest bit of linear dampening. Let's try that then. Might be on because there's too much on the spine bones. Oh, that's much closer. Okay, so there's too much on those spine bones as well. So on this next bone, let's just drop this linear dampening down for each of the bones that I put it on, like one or so. That should set. Actually, I'm going to up this top one's linear dampening to 3. I think so that it's more. Yeah, let's do that. Or shall I? No, 3 is probably too much. So 2.5 there, and let's set this to 2. So we've got a sort of a 0.25, 1, 2, 2.5. Yeah, that should be let's save that. Come back in here, press play. Oh, that's much more natural. That's much more natural. It almost looks like there's some nice air resistance there as well.